I didn't click talk, so let me try that again. My name is Sandy Schiefer. I'm a government documents librarian, and myself and Kelli Hansen from Special Collections will talk today about primary sources that you can use for research and for teaching. Government documents covers a wide range of material. There's a Federal Depository Library program which was established so that the citizens would be able to see the products of the government. So that was established, and they would automatically send out documents and publications from the government to these libraries. They would send them for free as long as libraries were open to then letting any citizen in to view them. They established regionals for each state. We are the regional library for Missouri, which we get everything the government publishing office prints. There are selectives, 27 I believe Missouri, that choose to receive a portion of the documents that the Federal Library FDLP sends out. As you realize with most things, there has been a big movement from paper format to online. And actually 97% of what gets distributed through this program is now online. We get fewer and fewer paper copies. But that's a good thing because anyone can view them at any time as long as you have an internet connection. When you think of government documents, you may think of, what, Congress maybe? And the laws and the bills and maybe Supreme Court decisions. That's what generally most people think of, Congress and the President. But you also have to think of all the government agencies that are out there. There's the Census Bureau, Department of Education, Department of Commerce, Department of State. So there are lots of different departments that touched on just about every subject. So if you're looking for information on education or agriculture, you can find that information from government documents. Most government documents are considered primary sources because they were written at the time that something was happening. And today I'm just going to look at some of the resources that we have and some of the topics that you might find. Here's just an example. There is a government document guide to primary sources. There are some general sources here which sort of you can find stuff from every decade. But if we look at a particular decade, this shows primary sources from 1830 to 1839. And what I've done is gone through and found out any major events that were happening at the time, what presidents were in office during that time, what congressional bills were important. And so these are listed on each decade's site. There's also some interesting illustrations that I found. You also patents are an interesting thing you can find. And there's a diagram, I'm not sure what that is. So we have this for each decade that you can go out and look for sources that are relevant. Inauguration speeches, the political platforms that were in place at that time. Census information, which goes all the way back to 1780. If you're looking for information, demographics in a particular city or county, you can find those through the census. And this page will have a link to the census for 1830. The Government Printing Office is the ones who run the Federal Depository Library program. They just changed their name to Government Publishing Office instead of Government Printing because printing is not all they do anymore. They do much more kinds of publishing. When in the early stages, there were no catalog records for all the government publications that came out. There was a monthly catalog that came out that listed all the documents. Every month there would be a catalog, but the documents were listed by department, by month. So it was really hard to find what you were looking for. You would have to go through all these monthly catalogs to find the title, and then how would you find them? They created GPO Access and collected this catalog of government publications. And it generally contains publications back to 1976. They're still working on filling some gaps. They're going back retrospectively, trying to add information. So this is a good place to start. If you find a publication in here, you can ask government documents if we have them. You'll also find government documents in our Merlin Catalog. And that will have links to paper copies if we have them, and to the many online publications that the government produces now. Those are in the catalog. The federal digital system was just put up, I think about 5 years ago, and it was another way to put together all the electronic publications in one spot. Well, not necessarily all of them, but most of the congressional to begin with. You can see the budget, GAO reports, that's Government Accountability Office. When the bill is passed, becomes law, they look at what the cost. Where's the money coming from? Where did it go? Was it spent responsibly? So you can use this to follow a program. There's a congressional record, which contains the debate in Congress. Every word that is said in Congress is put into the congressional record. They also have information on bills, on laws, Supreme Court decisions. So there's much information available at the Federal Digital System, or FDSys, as we call it. There's another one, Congress.gov. There's also a Senate.gov and a House.gov. If you're looking for something particular that has to do with Congress, you may have to try different, you think they should just have one site that has everything from all the Congresses. But Senate.gov has information on the committees and the subcommittees and the bills they're looking at, the members of the committees, and the reports that they put out. Yeah, Congress has the bills by subject. When a bill is sent in to the Congress, it's given a number by the clerk, and then it gets assigned to a committee. The committee usually assigns it to a subcommittee, and they're the ones who look at the bill, look at the wording, try to figure out what it will do. There's several ways that they can get more information to make decisions on this bill. They can hold hearings. Hearings are wonderful resources. So you're taken at that time. There's lots of discussion, both pros and cons on the bill. They have people testify. If it's an education bill, they will have not just people from the Department of Education, but people that are actually involved in public or private in education that will testify at the hearing. Another thing is Congressional Research Service reports. They're not listed here, but they are available on FDSys. The Congressional Research Service, like it says, is there for the Congress. If they've got a bill coming up and they want more information, some research into the topic, maybe the bills that have been passed before, their impact, what research they've done. Excuse me. So the committee requests the Congressional Research Service to do a report, say in immigration or hazing in the military. They put together and take it back to the committee. Once the committee has the bill the way they think it should be, it then goes back up to the main committee, and they can go through the same process with the hearings and reports, and then it goes to the main body of Congress to be voted on. And that's where you have debate, which is going to be in the congressional record. There's lots of good information just within Congress. But it's not just Congress. In addition to these free resources, we have several databases that the university has paid for to access this information. One of them is the Congressional Serial Set. And again, it has some overlap with some of the free sites, but this usually goes back a little bit further. Most of the online sites start about 1995, because that's when the internet and the World Wide Web was kind of getting started. So they had digital copies of this information, and they posted them on the web. Before 1995, it's a little spotty. So these databases, of course, pull together information at their cost, and then we pay for these databases. So there's usually a little more historical information in these paid databases. So the serial set is a combination of reports and documents from Congress. A committee writes a report when they're done looking at the bill to give to the higher committee or to the entire Congress. A document is something given to the committee that explains more information on a bill. There's also agency annual reports, like the Department of Education, the Department of Agriculture. So these are all part of the serial set. The serial set contains lots of really cool information on topics that you may not think of when you think about Congress. LexisNexis Academic, as you can see, has more information, more on the Justice Department than the executive or the congressional part. ProQuest Congressional Publications, again, has a lot of the same information that you might find on FDSys, but it usually goes back further. Another thing about these databases is it also searches full text, where online you have to know like the title or some other information. So these are also good resources. And the CRS there is the Congressional Research Service reports, which are published. Another one is Hyde Online. We have this with the law library, and you can see most of the stuff in here has more to do with the laws. The Federal Register and Code of Federal Regulations, this one says it has regulations. When a bill is passed and says the Department of Education needs to do this No Child Left Behind law. Well, how do they do that exactly? Congress lays out guidelines, but then the departments themselves put out the regulations. Regulations always have a period where the public can vote and comment on them before they're put into place. And then when they go into the Code of Federal Regulations. There's treaties in here and other legislative information, so these databases are a good place to look. Let's look at some topics that might be interesting for your classes or your research. Women's suffrage, the right to vote. And here, American Memory, if you see at the bottom there, this is from the Library of Congress. They also have lots of resources. They even have, let's see, okay, this is something from the Congressional Record about the right to vote for women. So you can get the opinions of the people that were in Congress that time. And this one talks about all that's left that couldn't vote are the criminally defective and the women. So should we give these people the right to vote? You know, are these sort of grouped into one group? So I'm not quite sure what he meant there. Should we deny them both, or is that sort of a question of saying maybe we shouldn't? What did the president think at the time? You can find this at the American Presidency Project, which contains a lot of the speeches, the annual talk with it. Yeah, State of the Union address. I should know that. But President Wilson looks like he was for the right for women to vote. We can look at the platforms. What did the Democratic and Republican Party think about this? Because the party platform is going to influence the opinions of those in Congress. So it looks like both of these are pretty much for the right to vote. In the serial set, I mentioned that there are committee reports and committee documents, or congressional documents, and just odd things. This is an article written by Miss Annie Riley Hale that was given to a committee. Now, this person was not really in favor of women voting. So far from being the vanguard of freedom and progress, she so proudly proclaims herself, she's really, in reality, the apostle of decadence and the herald of moral and social chaos. And that's what will happen if we let women vote. The National Archives has more information. Here is a picture of the 19th Amendment, which allowed the women to vote. Both the Library of Congress and the Archives has lots of primary sources, letters, diaries, photographs, all throughout history. Here on Memory, they have an entire section on votes for women. The collection there, which again will include congressional information, diaries, letters, and photographs. National Archives has a whole section on women and voting. This also covers other topics like politics and women in the military. So these resources are put together, and they often even have classroom activities. Most of these seem to be toward elementary or high school, but you could adapt these programs that they have for college-level courses. Here's another one, Citizen Photographs Reading Room. And they have court cartoons, campaign scenes, lots of good information for the Library of Congress. Another topic we might talk about. Everybody's concerned about high school dropouts, the number of people that are not completing high school. We can see this has always been a problem. This was from 1952 to 1957, and the number one reason that people left school is adverse school experience. Well, I have two teenage boys, and I think they view high school as an adverse social experience. But thankfully they haven't quit yet. It's interesting to note that the marriage is the reason. All the ones that did it for that were female. And of course, more males quit to go to work. And you can see some other actions. We've got a report from 1988, also on high school dropouts. 29% do not graduate 4 years later. That's a big portion of our population that are not completing high school. And here's a Congressional Research Service report for Congress back in 2001, a little more recent. But this talks about federal programs that have been put out to help retain students in high school. So again, this is a topic that has changed throughout history, but we can use our government publications to trace the history of this subject from when it was first thought about till today. Hazing has been a big topic these days. It also goes along with the whole idea of bullying and disrespect, actually, to people. So this has to do with hazing in the United States Military Academy, which has also been brought up from 1909. So they also had that same problem. And again, here's a Congressional Research Service report from 2001. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Here we go. Here's a hearing on hazing from 2012. Basically the same idea, hazing in the military. Most of the social problems that we have, immigration, ecology, agriculture, have always been around. So you can trace these ideas through time. Another topic, coeducation. They talk about that today. Should boys and girls be in the same classroom? Do girls do better in a classroom if they don't feel like they have to compete with the boys? There's different views on how they may view this and how good it may do. So they were discussing this back in 1887. It seems to be the natural order of things that boys and girls should be educated together. Can I move this out of the way? There we go. Because they grew up as brother and sister, and they're used to friends and that. So even back then, they think that it is better to mix the sexes together for education. What's this? Oh, I forgot to bring my microfiche. Does anybody know what a microfiche is? This is actually a piece of plastic. I meant to bring it up. And each one of those little squares is a page. Before computers, they needed a way to store lots of paper information in a small space. So they started doing microfiche. And what they took each page and miniaturized it and put it on these plastic sleeves. We have readers up in special collections. We can read these. You can scan them. You can print them, whatever you need to do. So a lot of the government information, especially older material, may be in microfiche. But don't let it discourage you, because you can use them and they're not that difficult to use. School lunch program. They're talking about many children today go to school hungry, or they go home hungry. And so the school lunch program, this is back in 1945, the establishment, maintenance, operation, and expansion of school lunch programs. So even back then they were concerned that students were not getting enough food to make it through their day and to help with their studies. Here's one in 1941. Equalized opportunities, health conditions, this is a school, kerosene lights, diet. So the school lunch program has improved the situation. So these students are getting more food. So you can see, here's a hearing from 1983 about how many children participate in this. Remember I mentioned hearings are a good place. There's usually data and statistics that sort of show both pro and con on an issue. And here's something from 2013 that talks about, are they eating enough fruits and vegetables with a school lunch? Do they just all throw their apples and bananas in the trash? How can we get them to eat healthier with this program? Taxation. Oh, the government. We know taxes, taxes. But again, you can follow this through Congress. The Stamp Act, which was the British sort of charged for paper and different types of documents, and you had to pay taxes on these. But this was another, reason that we wanted to separate from the British, that they should not impose these taxes on us. Here's a report on the Census of Manufacturers, which talks about taxation. And another one, assessed values. This looks at how much the real estate and personal property of each state. So how much was each state worth? And then it does break it down into county and also into school districts and that. So you get an idea of how much money that state was making, and then you could compare that to the tax burden. These are just a few odd ones. This is a committee, a hearing, on a bill to curtail the sweatshop conditions and child labor. Up till then, well, actually from before this, children, there were no laws that protected children from employment. They could work any age, as many hours as they wanted. So the child labor laws were helping to protect the children so they were not forced into labor at a young age. This was in, I'm going to have a date on this one. Nearly 1/4 of those under 16 were working 60 hours a week or longer. Can you imagine 8 to 10-year-olds working 60 hours a week? We work 40 and I go home exhausted. So these laws were very important in the way, in the idea of protecting children. Hearings on the Pearl Harbor attack. Here's some letters that are also printed in the hearing. This is about the birth control debate. So you see, it isn't just Congress, it's real people, it's citizens and experts in the field that also contribute information to Congress when they make their decisions. Yeah, the birth control is passed, it will be the end of our famed modern civilization and possibly the end of the white race. So this is a letter that someone had submitted to the hearing. There's also classified material. You can see some of it is redacted, with blank lines against it. And a lot of these come from the foreign relations, because we don't always want people to know the things we are agreeing to with different nations. Some of that is decided in secret. Through the Freedom of Information Act, many people are requesting these declassified documents. And so they are coming out into the public when they can be, though some of them might be redacted. Does anybody know about Oliver North? Who that is? I saw this one interesting. They about the American seal herd. There's a discussion about the treaty on seals and how many should be harvested, and concern about the conservation and protection of the fur seals. The Foreign Relations of the United States, I just mentioned, has information on all the treaties and agreements that we have, not extradition treaties, trade treaties, commerce information. And this was the Cuban Missile Crisis, where it was thought that the Soviets were building up armaments in Cuba, and then it was going to be a threat. So there was lots of discussion. And here's a transcript that was released from the Freedom of Information from John F. Kennedy and a general. And the general thought that there is no question at all. We have seen these missiles. They are a definite threat. And this is just an off-the-record meeting, which has been put together for the citizens to view. Again, the Cuban Missile Crisis, that we'll probably get a massive surprise strike. And there was a time where the president had his hands on that button, and they weren't quite sure if he should push it or not. There's a lot of text here, but just kind of glance through them. These are different topics. I just did some basic searches for some information on all the resources, and you can see there's a wide range of information. About any topic you can think of, there's been bills about it, or hearings, Congressional Research Service report, or departmental reports, as the Department of Agriculture or Department of Education. I like the DoD efforts to develop laser weapons, and the Pets Evacuation and Transportation Standards Act. I'm not quite sure what that's about. They talk about mental health, public recreation, scientific integrity. So these issues are not just historic, they also count towards today. So our government documents website, we've got lots of topic guides. We do have the one on primary sources, and the primary sources by decade. We have a source of listing of federal government databases. I'm sure you're aware that not all publications or things on the internet can be found through Google. All the stuff that's in databases, you can't find through Google. You're going to have to go to the database itself and search. So this is a listing of databases that we found so far where you can search. And then we have some topic guides, census, and we can see them here. And there's also, you can contact us for help. This library guides, Missouri.edu Gov Docs, is our main page, and you can get to all this information from there. Thank you very much for listening, and does anyone have any questions? Okay, well that's good. I'm going to turn this over to Kelli Hansen, who's going to talk about special collections. I think yours is.
Thank you. I'm Kelli Hansen, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about special collections and rare books, which is in this library. It's on the 4th floor on the west side of the building, and talk a little bit about what we have there, what we can do for you, what kinds of things we can help you with, and how to use the materials that we have. So, let's get started here. Probably because you're here, I don't need to convince you that using primary sources in your teaching and research is important, but I just always like to point out to people that we're very invested in the process of discovery, especially on this campus. And so in special collections, we like to think of this picture on the left, which are actual students in our reading room, as being the same as the picture on the right, which is this young man in a laboratory doing experiments. So we're working in this process of discovering and experimenting and researching and finding things out for yourself and creating knowledge for yourself. So what is the Department of Special Collections? We are basically the rare book department for the library. We have collections that span 4,000 years. The oldest things in the collection are Babylonian clay tablets that have, wonderful documents on them of sheep and goats that were taken to Mesopotamian temples 4,000 years ago. We have medieval manuscripts, we have books, maps, you can read the list that I have there, posters, and we also have over 8 million titles on Microforms. So Sandy mentioned a lot of the government documents on Microform that are available in special collections. And I'm not going to go over a lot of microfilm today. I'll show you a little bit about how to find it. But it is a big part of our collections upstairs. So many of the things that we have are primary sources, and that includes original documents, manuscripts, creative works like artwork, and artifacts. And I'll point out too that a lot of the books that we have in special collections are texts, you can read them, but they're also artifacts because you can look at them as an artifact of an earlier culture. And we'll kind of go over how you would approach that and how you would do that. So what kind of stuff do we have in special collections? We have about 90,000, actually closer to about 100,000 titles, about 1,000 works of art, a small amount of processed archival materials, and the 8 million microforms. Most of the materials can only be used in-house, meaning that you can come into the reading room and request them and use them in the reading room whenever the reading room is open, which is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. So that's a little bit of a limitation, but it's definitely worth it to go up and see what we have. And the collections are also open to all users. The only qualification for walking into the reading room is that we ask that you present a photo ID of some sort. It doesn't have to be an MUID. It can be a driver's license, but it doesn't even have to be a driver's license. We've had classes of 5th graders in the reading room. So if 5th graders can do it, you can do it too. So collection strengths. Our first area of strength is the history of the book. And these are just a few of the things from the collection, things that are available in this building, just upstairs right now, that illustrate this history of reading and history of technology. And we're in the middle of this big shift in reading technologies right now, where we're reading more and more on screens, and we're more and more connected to our technologies in many different ways. And so seeing these things and seeing how the written word has changed and evolved, and how technology has changed the way we can access information and the way that we can approach information and assimilate information into ourselves, is really valuable for students to see. So some of the things that are on the screen here just demonstrate all the various technologies that we have. We have the clay tablet that I mentioned earlier. The book that's open there on the screen on the right is the oldest book in our collection, the oldest complete book. We have fragments that are older, and it dates from about the middle of the 12th century, and it's actually a textbook. It's a grammar book, so I love to get it out and show it to students, because I'm like, this is a 900-year-old textbook. We have a scroll, which is a lovely Hebrew scroll and a great example of that kind of book technology from the past. And then above that is a beautifully decorated initial from an early printed book that shows that people kind of held on to these manuscript traditions for a really long time, even after print came along. They didn't throw their manuscripts out the window all at once. There was a long, long period of overlap between the printed book and the manuscript book that kind of echoes what we're seeing today. Another big area that we have is comics. Does anybody recognize the tie to Mizzou here that we have on the screen? Beetle Bailey, the cartoonist who is responsible for Beetle Bailey is Mort Walker, and he was actually a Mizzou student in the 1940s, and was a journalism student, and so he has a connection to Mizzou. There's the Beetle Bailey statue in front of the Alumni Center that you should all visit and have your picture taken with Beetle Bailey if you haven't done that yet. And so comics are a big part of our collection, and you can see here that we have both the original comic picture on the left and the finished product, basically the printed comic book that came out of that paste up design that was on the left. So that's one thing that we have. We have the papers of 5 cartoonists that have ties to Mizzou, and Mort Walker is one of them. Frank Stack and V.T. Hamlin and Edgar Martin and John Tinney McCutcheon. I actually got them all without looking at my notes. We also have about 4,000 comic book titles. And so you think of comic books as being, comic books are a serial publication, right? So you have a lot of different issues. So Amazing Spider-Man is a title. And you think of all those issues under the Amazing Spider-Man. We don't have all the issues for all the titles, but that's a lot of comic books. So if you're interested in comic books, you can definitely come up. Those materials don't check out, unfortunately, but you're welcome to sit in the reading room and use them for whatever purpose, even if you just want to sit there and read. We do have a lot of classes that use this material too. Artist books and the book as an artwork. These are all contemporary examples of how books can be works of art, and how the intersection between history and art and information. And so you see here, and I'm kind of waving my mouse over this, I don't know if the people at home will see it, but this is a pop-up book that's based on the visions of St. Hildegard, who was a medieval nun, who wrote a lot of beautiful poetry and was very, very intelligent, very scholarly, knew a lot of medicine. And someone in the 20th century went back and made a recording of her music and made this beautiful pop-up book that illustrates her visions. Right above it, we have this soliloquies, which has to do with slavery and suffering and the idea of being alone in this kind of ordeal. So these are all things that are really great for writing prompts, all sorts of applications for these materials. Posters. This is a really fun collection. We have, I think, over 1,100 World War I posters, and I think about 800 or 900 World War II posters. And I've taught these a lot to students. They're really bright, they're colorful, they're big, they're easy to work with, and they're all in the catalog now, thanks to our catalogers. They have cataloged every single one, so you can go in and search them through the Merlin Catalog and find these wonderful World War I and World War II posters by description, by title, by subject matter. They've done an excellent job getting them in there for us and making them searchable. So you can see just a few of the types of materials that are in that collection. One thing that's really interesting, and a former staff member here, Karen Witt, did a great exhibit a few years ago about the history of women in World War II. And so that's one topic that's really readily available in the posters. The other one that nobody's really worked on for a while is the anti-war movement. We have several, like this one over here on the right in the front, the anti-war movement posters that really illustrate how there were groups who were against the war and against both wars, and created their own propaganda material to kind of counteract what other groups are putting out. And then finally, history of science is our big collecting area. And these are some of the pages from the most recognizable books in our collection. We have lots of different landmarks of history of science, and we often use these in exhibits and also in classes. So you're looking at kind of the history of ideas, or the history of illustration, and how illustrations were used to convey ideas. They're all very useful materials for teaching and research. So for example, to trace one idea through the collections, I'm pulling from Sandy's presentation here, and looking at women's history in our collection. So you can come here and see, you can look through the catalog, and this is something that I found last March, actually, for Women's History Month. Evidence of women booksellers and printers in the 17th century, just by looking at the title pages. You can see this was printed for Mary Clark, which means that she's the financial backer, or printed by Mary Clark, so she is the printer. For Anne Mern, so she's the financial backer, and to be sold by Thomas Sawbridge, so he's the bookseller. So she basically ordered all of these to be printed by this woman printer to be sold in this guy's shop as a kind of financial venture. She's the publisher. The same with this lady here, Anne Sile, printed for Anne Sile. And there's another title page. This work actually has two title pages, where it also names the name of a male business partner that she was in business with, printing these books so that she could then sell them. Or the idea of women's work. These are two really famous cookbooks. This is by Hannah Glass. She supported her family by becoming a cookbook author, and she became so popular that people thought this cookbook must have been written by a man. It's just too good to have been written by a woman. And you see here it's by H. Glass. So we don't have any indication that it's Hannah Glass, but it was Hannah. And then on the left, or right, sorry, here is Mrs. Beeton. Has anybody heard of Mrs. Beeton? She was like the Martha Stewart of the 19th century. Everybody knew Mrs. Beeton in the 19th century. And she's really interesting because her name was Isabella Beeton. She was the oldest of, I think, like 20 children. And so she got a lot of experience growing up in childcare and domestic work and helping her mother. And when she married, she did at a pretty early age, probably around 20 or so, she got married to a publisher. And he recognized immediately that she was really smart and she could write really well. And so he kind of put her to work, and she took this on, and she produced this column, and she produced a magazine, and she produced this huge compendium of domestic information. And then she died by the time she was like 28. And so her husband, he was grief-stricken. He sold off the rights to her cookbook. And so it continued to be published as Mrs. Beeton's cookbook through the early 20th century. We're also looking at women as mothers. You can look at graphic materials in the collection. This is from a magazine that was aimed at women at the time. And we talk a lot about depictions of women in the magazines now, right? In fashion magazines and women's magazines, and how those depictions are kind of reflecting this false ideal back at ourselves. They are doing the same thing in the 19th century, which you can see here. And then finally, Cartoons, I love cartoons. This is from Punch, which is a humor magazine from the 19th century, and I think it's still being published today. We have a pretty long run of this in special collections. And here you have a cartoon that's about the efficiency of the female police and what they imagine the female police would dress like and look like and act like, and here they are kind of sneaking away because they don't want to break up a fight. As opposed to less than 100 years later, we have women who are police, military police, women who are firefighters. So again, looking at propaganda posters and war posters as part of women's history. So we've got all this great stuff for you guys to use for your projects and for your classes, and the question that I get a lot is, how do I find this stuff? So what I'm going to try to do is share my screen, if I'm brave enough, and show you guys how it works and how you can find things in special collections. So I'm starting out on the main library website, and what you want to do is come down here to Classic Catalog. This will show you what is in the building, so what's actually here. So most of the time when you're doing research, you know, when you have a topic, you just want to find the information about your topic. You don't really care where the stuff is or where it's coming from. But if you're interested in looking at things in special collections, or maybe you have a class that you're teaching that you want to do a project in special collections, it can be helpful to know what's here in the building. So if you go into this Advanced Search tab, and we'll put in a search term. Let's see. I was just looking, what do people search for in the past? Let's do chocolate. That sounds fun. It's almost Valentine's Day. Then you can come down here to specific library location and scroll a little bit, and here we are, right here under Vet Med, Special Collections. So you click that. If you want to limit language, you can do that. If you want to limit the year, you can do that. These things don't really apply, so don't worry. And then the last thing that I'll show you, actually I'll show you this later. So let's go ahead and look at what we turned up at this point. So chocolate milk. Milk, lots of chocolate milk. Oh, Hershey's, see, these are cute. We've got these little cookbooks. I know what these are. And they're made to be Christmas ornaments. They're also little tiny cookbooks that you can actually read. So that's what that is. So you can see we've got some things in the University of Missouri collection, which is an archive of university publications and faculty publications that we maintain. There's a lot of microform, which, as I was mentioning, we've got 8 million of those. You can kind of scroll through and see what brings, you know, what the search brings up. If you want to change it, we can go into Modify Search here. And so if you're interested in bringing in a class to work in the reading room, and maybe you're not interested in having them use microfilm, maybe you just want to have them see books, you can actually highlight that here and say, I only want to see books, and maybe journals and newspapers. And that will take out the microfilm, and you can see we've got much less now that we've taken out the 8 million microfilm. So that's a good way to find what's in the collection. Let me go back now. So that's how to find stuff number 1. It's the Merlin Catalog. How to find stuff number 2 is the Special Collections website. So let me go back to screen sharing. Sorry to go back and forth. And we'll go back to the library homepage. And to get to the Special Collections website, you come here under Libraries. And we are right here, Special Collections. So this is our website. And you can see we've got some quick links here for things that people use a lot. And then collection descriptions here. These are not all of our collections showing up in the menu here. It would be really long if they all showed up. So we just have the top 5 that people use in the menu here, but then you can go to more and see a listing of everything that we have. And most of these are just descriptions, but actually if you go into them, so let's go to comic collection real quick and I'll show you guys a trick. If you go into these collection descriptions, we've set up links in them so that you can go straight out to the catalog and see what's in that collection. Everything that's in the comic collection is right here. The other thing that I wanted to show you guys is those 8 million microforms. We have a lot of different subject guides for them. And so you can find a list of the subject guides here, and that will tell you what we have in terms of microforms in the department. So for example, for Black Studies, these are some of the things that we have. And so you'll see it will tell you where it is in the library, if there's a call number here, and that's linked to the catalog. It will tell you what the guides are, and that usually has a link in the catalog too, so you can see what the call number of the guide is and look that up. You can also search in this little box if you're interested in that too, and it will pick up on these microphone subject guides. So, I better finish up. So now you can find it. So how do you go about using this? And the rest of this is geared more toward teachers because we're looking at how do you use this stuff in your classes. So if you're going to bring a class into special collections, I would say start off first with what do you want to get out of it? What do you want your students to get out of it? And how is it going to fit with the rest of your course? So think about your objectives and what you are really thinking about using this stuff for. The best way to start out with your goals is to start with an assignment. And so I have some suggestions for types of assignments here, and at the end of the presentation I have a link to a LibGuide that I have set up just for instructors using things in special collections. So you guys can see there's a lot more in-depth information about assignments. There's actually even some worksheets and some sample prompts that you can adapt there. So all sorts of different assignments that you can use. But the important thing is to get them doing something with the stuff. And I say stuff because it's not just books. But when they come in, if we're just kind of saying, look at this cool thing, it doesn't really make a lasting impression, and it doesn't teach them the research skills that they need to take away from that experience. More ideas for assignments. These are 2 excellent books. They're all case studies. This one has all exercises, all assignments, and worksheets, and all sorts of things that you can use with your students, and it's geared toward the college level, which is really hard to find. This one is all case studies on how people have used special collections in various classes in the past, so you can read through for ideas. And then Sandy mentioned the National Archives and the Library of Congress have these great lesson plans and worksheets that are mostly geared for K-12 that I've adapted them to use in classes. They're really great starting point to use for things. And then teacharchives.org is a really excellent site. There's also a whole Zotero bibliography that's maintained by the Society of American Archivists that has just hundreds of articles about teaching with special collections and archives, mostly from the librarian's perspective, but if you're faculty or a graduate instructor, there's a lot that you could get out of those too. And then so I mentioned that we have this LibGuide online, so let me see if I can remember what it's called and we'll go out and look at it. Okay, so this is the library guide that we have. And you can see kind of an overview of our services here. This is the button to request a class session with us. It takes you straight to our form on our website where we just ask you for some information about your class to get you signed up for a session. More about our collection strength. There's a step-by-step guide to searching here, which is what I just took you through, but you can also print it out as a handout here in case you want to do that. There are some videos that our wonderful Naz helped us do, and Stefan over there helped us set up to kind of get your students oriented if you want them to watch in advance. Also some handouts that you can print out to give them before they come in. And then finally the assignments that I mentioned. Lots and lots of assignments in detail. Some of these we've already tried. Some of them are things that other libraries have tried and published on, so I've kind of adapted them to use with our collections. So all just kind of jumping off ideas. And then finally worksheets, if you want them to fill something out and turn something in while they're in the reading room. And of course, even more resources. And some of these were those links that I mentioned in the slides. So there's the, here's the Zotero bibliography that I mentioned. There's teacharchives.org. So all of these links are right here for you. And then the books, links to the books that we have. And we do have both of these in special collections. They're in the catalog. They're considered reference books, so they don't check out, but you can always come in and look at them.
How do you get to the guide?
The LibGuides.
Oh, the LibGuides. Okay, let me go back. It's not sharing again. Okay, so let me go back and forth.
Subject guides, special collections.
I think I closed it. Oh. Thank you.
Done with your
Yay. Okay, so you can go to, let's see, from the main library page. I might need help with this. And you can, are they under class resources? And you can go to course guides, I think, right?
No, that's just for the course.
Oh, that's just.
But then it lists the subjects at
That's
the same
it?
spot we'll go to. If you scroll back up to
Oh.
there's subject
Okay.
guides and purpose guides.
Oh yes, subject guides. Okay, so I think mine is under general purpose.
Okay.
And then you can come down here and it, I can't remember exactly what it's called. Well, here it is. Here it is. The resources for instructors. Anybody else have questions about the guide? Okay. All right. So I will try to wrap up. I don't think I have much left to go over. So this is our contact information. If you are interested in bringing in a class or coming in for your own research or just have questions, you can always contact us. Email us or call us. You can also get to us through the Ask a Question page on the main library website. And then this is my contact information. And I think that's all I got. So do you guys have any questions about using things in special collections? Yes.
Do you know anything about MFA?
Sorry?
MFA manuscript is operated here in local one.
Oh.
And it's had a true story, 100 years long.
Yeah, the Missouri Farmers.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that would probably be at the State Historical Society.
Okay.
Yeah, so, and that's a really good point to bring up, is that it can be kind of confusing about what's in special collections and what's at state historical. So the rule of thumb is if it deals with Missouri history, it's probably at the State Historical Society. And if it's U.S. history and world history, it's probably in our collections. That's a really good question. Yeah, Sandy wants to come back.
Hi, back again real quick. I just wanted to show you how to get to the government documents pages before we leave here. If we go to our gateway, again under libraries, which is where you see special collections, you can see here government documents, and that will take you here. You've got the home page, which is not showing. That's I'm not sure why it's not showing up. For instance, I mentioned the government electronic databases. These are by topic, and here's the primary sources page. Let's look at 1850. So mainly, if you go to the home page and then choose government documents under libraries. Government documents. I don't know.
It might look different on your.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we do have information on Missouri, Boone County, and other information too. I just want to show you how to get there. So any questions for Kelly or myself? I think we're almost at 2 o'clock. So we thank you for coming. And if you have any questions in the future, please feel free to contact either one of us or any library. I'm going to show you real quick how you can get a hold of us. The main page is the Contact Us. And you can call us, you can text us, you can stop by the reference desk, you can chat, or you can contact a subject librarian on your topic. So we're there to help. That's our job, is to help you guys with your instruction and your research. So never feel like that you're bothering us. Please contact us if you have any questions. Thank you.
Mail you papers.